day. And really beyond that, again, no clear information as to if there's any more of, with all of those leads pouring in right now, if there's any more sense of a sense that there could be another person that they're looking at.
FBI. Josh, let me start with you. The FBI said today that it's conducting an extensive search around Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood in the Catalina foothills area today. You have some new reporting on what they might precisely be looking for. What is it?
That's right. We've seen these agents now back out on the streets where you are there in the Tucson area. A law enforcement source familiar tells me that they're out there searching for any possible items that the man who was seen in that chilling video outside Nancy Guthrie home, he had those various items on him. Now they're concerned and looking to see, well, maybe did he throw those away, discard them as he was then leaving the scene there. And so they're going through in this very, as Ed described, this tedious process, looking for, can they find the mask? Can they find the gloves, the backpack, any of those items? The goal is, if they are able to recover them, to then analyze to see if there's any type of DNA they can extract as they try to get an identification of who this person is. So very much a twofold effort right now. We have this public plea and appeal from law enforcement to the public for tips, but behind the scenes, they're still looking for that evidence and that one big break in the case, Jake.
Frank, are there parts of the videos or the still photos released yesterday or any other elements of this investigation that you think could lead law enforcement to believe that Nancy Guthrie is still being held in Tucson or the surrounding area?
Yeah, Jake, I could make a case either way here. So the case in favor of Nancy still being alive is that in the video, we do see an individual who has some degree of preparation for this. Whether that preparation means he also planned several steps ahead, we don't know. But the fact that he was covered head to toe, that he wanted to hide his identity, that he somehow gained access, this does lead to the possibility of a legit kidnap. I'm not sure about a legit ransom plan, but that does mean he or she could still be alive. The argument against that could be that while he was prepared, he seems to be unplanned. And I'm pointing specifically to his seeming surprise with regard to the doorbell cam and the need to go, hey, let me go grab some brush and see if that works. That's not a lot of planning. And I'm hoping against hope that he didn't just go in with some intent to harm and things went awfully bad. And this whole thing about ransom is a mere afterthought or a cover for something else.
Yeah. And Frank, on the gentleman that was detained overnight and questioned in connection and then completely released, he calls himself Carlos. He says he was held in handcuffs from 4 p.m. last night, Mountain Time here in Arizona, to 12 a.m. He was not read his Miranda rights for 2 hours. Are tactics like that typical when questioning a subject during a case like this? And what do you make of the fact that they released him, they let him keep his phone? His mother-in-law let law enforcement search the house. What's your read on this all?
Boy, it's sloppy and messy, Jake. It's not ideal, but you have exigent circumstances. You have a life and death situation. Would I like to see this handled differently? Yes. If he's telling the truth that he was handcuffed for hours without Miranda rights, we know that Miranda versus Arizona says if you have custody plus interrogation, you need Miranda rights. So something's not right with this picture. I don't know if Pima County rushed it. I don't know if the FBI was initially in on that plan or not, but they need to back up and use some of the FBI techniques and gadgets that would allow you to surveil a home and know what's going inside before you hit it.
And Josh, TMZ reports that they received a letter via email from someone who purports to know who the kidnapper is, but they're demanding a single Bitcoin worth about $67,000 in exchange for the information. How seriously do you think investigators should take this Bitcoin part of these mysterious emails that media outlets are getting in this specific claim?
Well, the FBI has said that it is going to take every lead they get seriously, but I don't know, Jake. Here, I think we need a lot more information to fully assess whether this is something that is verifiable and valid in this case. We know, sadly, in these notorious kidnapping, high-profile cases, sometimes authorities will get tips that end up being relevant. Sometimes they get tips from people who maybe are just sending it with the best of intentions, but then they don't actually relate to the case. And then kind of this third category that we've been talking about since these purported ransom notes started surfacing, and that's people that for sinister reasons or just to cause mischief simply try to gum up the system and slow down the investigation. And so I think we have a lot more to do before we give credit to this. It's also worth pointing out that even after those purported ransom notes, there still hasn't appeared to be any communication between the person who sent them and the family. So I think TBD on that as authorities wait to determine whether that's actually applicable here.
And Frank, the Sheriff's Department here says that there's not going to be a news conference unless there's a significant development in the case and something to actually share. Everything that unfolded yesterday with the new image, a person detained, that all seemed pretty significant to me. Why would they not have a public update?
So in law enforcement, when you go through press conference training, they do tell you, don't hold a press conference if you've got nothing to say. It's going to work against you. But you brought up a good point, Jake, which is when you've also done something very high profile and public that hasn't panned out, you really don't want to have to answer questions about it. So that's factoring in as well.
Yeah. Frank, Figliusi National Lead, we're live from Tucson, Arizona, right outside the Pima County Sheriff's Office. The chilling surveillance photos and videos released yesterday showing an armed, masked individual outside Nancy Guthrie's home back in the early morning hours on Sunday, February 1st. They're not just a nightmare, they're the biggest break so far in the disappearance of the 84-year-old. And they may offer investigators important clues about her kidnapper's identity. So what might those clues be? Let's bring in Edward Baker, who specializes in analyzing forensic videos such as these. Edward, thanks for having us. It's been more than 24 hours since the FBI released these images and videos. They're pretty decent quality as far as I can tell, compared especially with other ones that have led to the capture of alleged murderers. Law enforcement has worked with a lot less and successfully found suspects. Luigi Mangione, for example. As an expert who analyzes video, can you explain the process of how to enhance these images and what the FBI might be able to learn about this individual?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Jake. Everything starts out as a research project. So if we, as law enforcement did, get our hands on the video, we, as an analyst, will assess the video and determine the quality of the video. What are the characteristics of the video? How was the video recorded? In what format? And are there artifacts or compression involved in that recording process? Once we determine that, then we look at the visual aspect of that. What's the fidelity of the video? What's the quality? What kind of details or pixel resolution are we working with? What's the pixel density in certain critical areas, like the face or the backpack or the gloves or things of that nature? So that opportunity with this particular video has done a couple of things for us. One is it's done exactly what law enforcement was hoping for, and that's generating a lot of tips. The thing that we have to be careful of as an analyst, or even for the public's information, is there's some aspects of that video when you visually look at it that you have to throw caution to the wind. And what I'm talking about specifically is that camera has a IR filter, which allows that camera to see at night. The part we have to be careful with is the effects of that IR light, meaning that jacket that subject is wearing could be red, it could be blue, it could be white. But because of the IR effects on clothing or organic materials, it changes color. It may make the zipper look different than what it actually looks like in normal lighting conditions. So with that said, we want to be careful as an analyst to put out observations without a caveat or a disclaimer, if you will, that keep in mind this appears to look like this, but in real life it may look slightly different.
There are a lot of well-meaning, no doubt, but let's just say inexperienced individuals on social media who are taking these images and running it through AI and putting out videos where the person has a red jacket or a blue jacket or a green jacket. But I wonder, is there actually a way for forensic experts such as yourself to actually determine the colors based on the video we saw that appears to be black and white? But can it be done to figure out what those exact colors are, either getting a Nest camera and going to the scene itself and figuring it out, or some other way?
Yeah, there are techniques. I mean, if you took the video on its own and tried to reverse engineer the effects of the infrared light, that'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to do. However, what law enforcement does in situations like that is, if they have suspect clothing or an article of that type, they can bring it back to the scene under the same conditions and hold it up in front of the camera, giving us a baseline in which to compare to. And that would be very helpful in determining some of the unique characteristics or the class characteristics that are on or seen in that garment. It would also give us an understanding of perhaps what skin tones or even tattoos may look like in those conditions. So, I understand law enforcement's asking for the public's help, but we have to kind of tread lightly and inform, the public that, look, this may be your perception of what those clothing articles look like, but it may not, again, be what they appear in real conditions. So we want to be careful as analysts that we're not, putting out information that may change over time, because that information can come back and backfire on us later on. So we got to be careful with that.
Investigators in Arizona are scouring rugged terrain and sweeping the area around the home of Nancy Guthrie in their search for any new evidence in her disappearance. On Wednesday, a New York Post reporter told CNN of a potential clue: a black glove found about 1.5 miles from Guthrie's home. It's unclear if authorities believe it's the same glove worn by the person in the doorbell camera video released by the FBI, captured the night Guthrie disappeared. Now, that person was also seen wearing this backpack. We're told investigators are trying to figure out what type of bag it is. Meanwhile, TMZ says it received what it called a bizarre letter from someone claiming to know who Guthrie's kidnapper is and demanding a single Bitcoin, which is currently worth about $66,000, and that in exchange for the information. CNN's Nick Watt is following all the developments from Tucson.
Agents have been searching again the area around Nancy Guthrie's house, which is where I'm standing now. They have been walking along roads, looking in the undergrowth, looking in the arroyos, trying to find basically anything that was discarded by that suspect. Now, the New York Post reports that investigators did find a black glove lying by the side of a road. That will, of course, be analyzed to find any trace of a person on that, any DNA, anything that would help investigators. Investigators have also been back at Annie Guthrie's house, near there. Annie Guthrie is, of course, Nancy's daughter. We spoke to one neighbor who said that the FBI came around about a week ago, just canvassing. They came back and asked to look on the back of this guy's property, right where it butts up against Annie Guthrie's. So basically, since that video came out, they have redoubled their efforts trying to find anything that might have been discarded by that suspect as the suspect was leaving. They have had many, many calls, about 4,000 calls just in a day to the tip line. One of those calls led to a man being detained and then later released, but they are still appealing for more help. This video and the public could end up being the key to cracking this case. Nick Watt, CNN, Tucson, Arizona.
Joining me now from Washington is Homeland Security Analyst Donnell Harvin. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
So how far along do you think this investigation is right now, at nearly day 12, with the new discovery of a black glove on the side of the road about 1.5 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home, and of course the clues left in the doorbell camera video released on Tuesday, including the backpack, the gun, the clothing, and the individual's mannerisms?
Well, how far along the investigation is a little more complicated than that. It's not a linear process, right? So people think that every clue adds to the kind of overwhelming picture. Sometimes it actually starts you from the beginning. We saw that law enforcement had to go back to the home over the weekend, tow a vehicle, get another camera device off of the home, and start analyzing that. And so it creates more and more leads, but it also starts you from the beginning for that particular lead.
And what questions are you asking right now, and what more would you like to see investigators do nearly 2 weeks after Nancy Guthrie's abduction?
Yeah, this is difficult. From everything I've seen, they're doing as much as they can. This is really an unfortunate circumstance. I think that getting the Ring camera system, the video door system out to the public is important. The backpack, the jacket, those things are going to be unique and really key to helping the public. Now, understand that many, many crimes across the US and across the world are often solved by the public. And so getting millions of eyes on that evidence, as we've seen and we showed, is so important because law enforcement can't do it on their own. Unfortunately, that can lead you astray. As Nick mentioned in the lead-in, someone was called in that had no, part in this, and he was detained and questioned, and everyone kind of glommed onto that as maybe we have the person, and then he had to do a big exhale inside because it wasn't anybody that was related, and they had to start back from square one.
Right, you mentioned the role of the public, and of course the FBI tip line has attracted about 18,000 calls since Nancy Guthrie was abducted on February 1st, and that includes more than 4,000 tips since the doorbell video was made public on Tuesday. How do law enforcement sort through what's false and what might potentially lead to a breakthrough in the case?
Yeah, because that's the big part. I mean, once you start going out there and asking the public for their help, you better be prepared to process that. And that is a monumental task. But you can't not listen to any one call. I mean, think back at some of the really important cases that were solved. And it was just someone saying, hey, I thought I saw that person, or, I think that I see someone suspicious, or who I sold that jacket to. And so we can look at case after case of individuals that noticed a small thing that investigators ran down and that led to a perpetrator. I think my biggest concern, and I don't, like to kind of theorize on this, is that this is a frail, elderly woman, and we're coming up on day number 11 or 12, if my numbers add up. I am not particularly convinced that this is a trained individual, that this person really thought this through enough to take care of this woman for the amount of time that's necessary so that she doesn't fall ill, or we know that she's injured as well. And so every day that goes by, every minute that goes by is so critical because this person does not seem to have thought this crime out particularly well.
I mean, that is indeed the big concern here, isn't it? And when you look at what we do know so far, how likely is it, do you think, that Nancy Guthrie will be brought home safely?
I'm confident and hopeful that authorities can bring her home. But once again, time is really not on our side here. I mean, you have a perpetrator, a potential perpetrator that showed up to a home, didn't even realize that there was a Ring camera. When he realized, or she realized, we're assuming it's a male, that there was a Ring camera, went to get some foliage to cover it up. I mean, that's not someone who planned this out particularly well. You can walk down to my street and I can look and see everyone in my street my neighborhood has a Ring camera system. And so that's what concerns me. It really takes a lot to sustain a human being in captivity for a day, let alone 10 or 11 days. And so I really hope that she's well and she's alive, but really time is running out.
Yeah, it is a real concern. Of course, we will see how significant that glove is that was found. We don't know if it was linked necessarily, but hopefully we'll find out more in the coming hours. Danelle Harvin, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Arizona, where it's 11 o'clock, there is an urgent search still underway looking for new evidence in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Investigators are combing through rough terrain around her Tucson area home. On Wednesday, a New York Post reporter told CNN of a potential clue, a black glove found about 1.5 miles from Guthrie's home. It's unclear if authorities believe it is the same glove worn by the person in the doorbell camera video released by the FBI, captured the night that Guthrie disappeared. That person was also seen wearing a backpack. That's what that looks like. We're told investigators are trying to figure out what type of bag it is. Meanwhile, TMZ says it received what it called a bizarre letter from someone claiming to know who Guthrie's kidnapper is. Harvey Levin talking with Aaron Burnett earlier.
The letter essentially says, I've tried to get in touch with Savannah's brother and sister to no avail. And they sent it to us then, and they said, if they want to get the name of the individual who is involved in this kidnapping, send the Bitcoin, give us a Bitcoin through this address. And they say time is more than relevant.
Joining me now live is CNN national security analyst Juliette Kayyem. Juliette, welcome back to the Story Is. Thanks for staying up late with us.
Thank you.
What do you think is the biggest, most important headline of the day?
You know, I have to be honest with you. You know, obviously the video is relevant. If this glove is real, is relevant. But today was the day I felt like the signal, what we call in my field, the signal to noise ratio really got out of kilter. In other words, there's now so much going on around this story. Our potential witnesses or people who know what's going on, they're calling TMZ. You have a lot of sort of outside noise. And what's really going to be hard for investigators is to focus on, you know, the signal. What is the evidence telling them, and can they link that evidence to an individual? We saw last night or 2 nights ago with the taking of a person of interest who then was released 12 hours later. It does seem that they've got lots of clues, but maybe nowhere closer to determining who in fact has Nancy Guthrie and what her condition is.
Well, and to that point, you cover the national security beat at the highest level.
Yeah.
And on this case now, this is being dealt with at the highest level. I mean, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, personally involved. It is clear that President Trump is personally involved and getting updates on this case. And how does that impact things down below?
Yeah.
The fact that there's so much pressure and attention from the top.
That's a great question, because I sometimes wonder that too, like whether Savannah Guthrie's frame, which may be tied to what's happening right now, we certainly don't know. You know, did the people who took her mother know that she had access to resources? Did they know that there would be this kind of publicity? Obviously, this hunt and the people interested and a nation sort of riveted and horrified by what's going on is all because of her ties, because Nancy is Savannah's mother. And that adds a lot of noise. It adds a lot of crazy people who are doing horrible things in this moment of dire distress for the family. But it also leads to the kind of focus that you're seeing from the FBI. I do worry, though, that kind of pressure will lead to actions that may not be appropriate. I wonder what drew them to this person of interest. Was it pressure to get someone at least, you know, sort of under interrogation, and then they realized it was nothing? But, you know, obviously, you know, when this started, the police said this has nothing to do with who Savannah Guthrie is. I just don't think that's true. I mean, I'm not blaming her, of course. I just think the interest, the ability of Google, or the willingness of Google to sort of defy all of their technology to find an image, all of that is because of her, of all of us knowing who she is, and then of course the political interest.
Yeah, you've got the full sort of scope of all the best of what comes with that, and some of all the worst of what comes with that as well, with the nation totally riveted in a way that we haven't seen in a case in a long time. I mean, the ratings even for the TV networks last night were higher than they've been in a very long time. People are transfixed on this case, and they want to see, hopefully, a successful outcome.
Nearing 12 days into the search for Nancy Guthrie, and tonight the Pima County Sheriff's Department says it has received, get this, more than 18,000 calls since she vanished. As far as we know, law enforcement is operating off of the following timeline, okay? Nancy Guthrie took an Uber on Saturday, January 31st, around 5:32 p.m. to her daughter Annie's home to have dinner and game night. Police say that family members dropped her back home around 9:48 that night. Hours later, at 1:47 a.m. on Sunday, February 1st, her doorbell camera disconnects. And 25 minutes later, the camera's software detects someone. Now, perhaps it's the subject we've seen in the surveillance video, but we don't know. Nancy's pacemaker disconnects from her phone about 16 minutes after that. No one noticed she was missing until she didn't show up at her friend's home to watch a virtual church service that morning. Guthrie's family went to the home to check on her at around 11:56 in the morning and immediately called 911 after realizing that she was missing. Now that triggered the search. And since then, local TV stations in Tucson have received 2 ransom notes on February 3rd and February 6th, but there's still no sign of Nancy Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood has been flooded with agents going door to door to speak to neighbors and to look for any clues that could help find her. I'm joined by a neighbor who lives just a few houses down from Nancy, Walter Branson. Walter, thank you for joining. I can only imagine what it's like in your neighborhood. We have seen law enforcement going door to door looking for clues. You were actually out of town until today. Can you describe what the police presence is like today?
Thanks, Laura. We actually were only out of town for 2 days, but the presence has been consistent throughout the period since Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And even before we went out of town, the sheriff came to our door multiple times, but it happened. I guess we're out a lot. We were out each time they came to the door, so we saw them on the Ring doorbell, but we actually haven't spoken to them yet.
Let's talk about the Ring doorbell, because there's a lot of people, sorry Walter, who are saying they can't seem to grasp that no other home camera would have been able to capture anything. But can you just describe for people who don't know your neighborhood? I mean, how far apart are the houses? What's the privacy like between them?
Yeah, that's really probably the reason. So all of the houses in this acre have minimum 1 acre zoning. Okay. In addition, all of the houses pursuant to restrictions on their deed have to be at least 30 feet from the road. And also we live in kind of a high desert environment here with heavy vegetation, so not what people typically think of as a desert. So most of the houses have trees, large cactuses in front, and certainly Nancy Guthrie's house was in that category. Because of the distance between houses, how far back they're set from the road, and the vegetation, people's doorbells will rarely, if ever, see their neighbor's driveway or their door. So I'm not at all surprised that Ring doorbells didn't really capture anything.
I'm so glad you described that.
Aside from hers, of course.
Right. I'm so glad you described that, because people have been wondering how could that be, people normally living in much closer proximity. But I can imagine that everyone in your neighborhood nonetheless sort of organically checked those cameras when this happened, or did law enforcement reach out for that request?
Yeah, I mean, we all did check our cameras. We were asked to do that. In our case, our camera doesn't even face towards the road, so we were fairly certain we wouldn't see anything. But you know, everyone checked their cameras, and I'm sure nothing came up other than her own camera. Walter,
After your description of what the area is like and the terrain that is so unfamiliar to me, but can you just, have you been surprised about the way the search has been conducted? Is anything surprised you about it?
Well, I mean, I guess the helicopters. So we first became aware of this when helicopter was going over our house multiple times, but even days later, sheriff helicopter was still going over our house multiple times as they did a grid search, and we were wondering, I mean, do they think she would be outside? We didn't understand, what they would be searching for. So that surprised us a bit. Other things that other people are aware of, like searching the septic tank, we couldn't figure out what would be in the septic tank. But again, I'm sure law enforcement, knows what they're doing and would have good answers, but I just can't, imagine what those, reasons would be.
Walter Branson, thank you so much. Right now, the most important clue investigators have is the doorbell surveillance video showing a man in front of Nancy Guthrie's home the night she vanished. There's been a lot of focus on the backpack, the mask, the gloves, even the shoes. But tonight, I want to examine the gun. You can see it right here on the person's waist in some sort of holster. It makes Nancy's disappearance, frankly, all the more chilling. But this image, it could actually hold some very critical clues for investigators. And I want to bring in Stephen Gutowski. He is a firearms expert and founder of thereload.com. Stephen, let's talk about that firearm, because I know it's a very blurry image, and that's part of the frustration of law enforcement trying to solve this and find Nancy. But what is your best assessment of even what kind of gun this might be?
Yeah, well, from the video, it appears to be a compact or subcompact semi-automatic pistol. Obviously, we don't have a high-resolution image of it, but the profile, to me, my first instinct is to say it looks like a Sig Sauer P365. I have a couple of those, and they have a similar grip profile, and that's really all we can see in the picture, right? We can't see the barrel or the slide or the trigger guard or the trigger. We can see the grip, and it has a grip that looks similar to this SIG model pistol, which is an extremely popular firearm in the United States. And of course, also, there are a number of other pistols that have a similar grip shape, so you can't really say for sure that it's that model. That's just
why are those so common? I mean, is it because something about the type of gun it is that it makes it easier to use for an amateur? I mean, what would it tell you about the person who has that sort of weapon?
Yeah, I mean, it's if it is a 365 or something similar with a similar grip shape, those are very popular for concealed carry, right? For carrying on your person because they're more compact, they're smaller than traditional large full-size firearm. And so that's what makes them so popular. They're also fairly affordable. They're made for mass market production.
That makes it harder to track down if it's not unique. That's interesting. A lot of people are talking about the holster, and many people aren't gun owners, wouldn't necessarily be focused on the holster itself. They think about what's inside the holster. But you were looking at that holster too, and you had some thoughts as to why it shows maybe this person isn't maybe accustomed to carrying a weapon safely.
Yeah, it appears to be from the images, from the video, that it's a fabric, maybe a leather holster. It looks like a cheap fabric holster, though. And these are not holsters that you would usually see someone carrying if they're somebody who carries a lot. If they're
Why?
Who's an enthusiast. Because if a fabric for a gun like this is made out of, or if the holster is made out of fabric, a soft material, it's actually unsafe. It can be unsafe to carry because something could get in there and pull the trigger when it's not supposed to, right? Because there's nothing there's no hard surface around it to block something from getting in and causing a negligent discharge or accidental shooting. And so the vast majority of people who carry regularly, whether they're law enforcement or civilians, will use what's called Kydex. It's a hard plastic, and they'll use that as their holster. Carrying in the front is becoming much more common and much more usual to see, but not like this, and not with this type of holster, because people carry what they call appendix in the front. It's a little bit easier to access, a little quicker. That's why people tend to do it, but they do it concealed. They do it underneath, inside their waistband, under their clothing, and they do it with these hard plastic holsters.
Any reason you could assess whether they were right or left-handed by virtue of where the holster is?
It looks right-handed because the grip is set up to be able to be grabbed with your right hand. That's what it appears to be for me.
Investigators are sweeping the area around the home of Nancy Guthrie, looking for any evidence in her disappearance. On Wednesday, a New York Post reporter told CNN of a potential clue, a black glove found about 1.5 miles from Guthrie's house. It's unclear if authorities believe it's the same glove worn by the person in the doorbell camera video released by the FBI, which was captured the night that Guthrie disappeared. That person was also seen wearing this backpack. We're told investigators are trying to figure out what type of bag it is. Meanwhile, TMZ says it received what it called a bizarre letter from someone claiming to know who Guthrie's kidnapper is and demanding a single Bitcoin, currently about $66,000, for that information. CNN's Nick Watt joins me now from Tucson, Arizona. Nick, what would you say was the big headline of this day?
Well, they are searching again. FBI agents all around here, all around Nancy Guthrie's home, looking for anything that might have been discarded or dropped by that person that we see in that chilling video, the Nest camera video from the door that shows this masked, armed person arriving in the early hours of that Sunday morning when Nancy Guthrie disappeared. So they have been going through the gravel, through the undergrowth. There's a huge empty lot across the road from Nancy Guthrie's house. They have been searching for anything, and according to the New York Post, they did find a black glove. Now, if you remember in that chilling video, that suspect, that person is wearing gloves. They have apparently found a black glove. Now, we don't know if that glove is indeed connected. It was found within 2 miles of Nancy Guthrie's house. We don't know if it was connected or not, but you can be assured that investigators will be trying to get anything from that glove that might lead them to a suspect. So really what has been going on since that video came out is lots of tips. 4,000 tips in a day came in after that. And investigators are just going over old ground. Now that they know what they're looking for maybe that backpack, the gloves, the ski mask, they're searching again. And we've also heard that they've been searching again at Annie Guthrie's house around there. Annie Guthrie is of course, Nancy's daughter. Nancy was there for dinner the night before she disappeared, and one neighbor there said, yeah, you know, the FBI came around about a week ago just canvassing. They came back and they asked me if they could look around the outside the back of my property, the bit of his property that butts on to Annie Guthrie's property. So basically that video has supercharged this investigation, has given investigators something to go on. They are searching, but still we don't have a name of any suspect. Alex?
Yeah, and that one of the tips after that video led them to that potential person that they were interested in last night, who they detained and then they released. So sometimes some of these tips are good, and sometimes some of these tips are not as good.
Well, and Alex, what was amazing about that is that guy Carlos told us that his mother-in-law had spoken to investigators and said, you know, why did you pick up Carlos? Why did you detain him? Apparently there had been an anonymous tip that the eyes and eyelashes looked like Carlos. This person called in and said, yeah, the eyes and eyelashes look like this guy Carlos. That's why he got picked up. That's why he was questioned for hours. His car searched, his home searched. He was let go. He says he has nothing to do with it. He said, I hope they find the lady. I hope they find the guy that did it. It's not me.
Meanwhile, you mentioned a backpack. There's focus on a backpack. Why is that significant?
Well, listen, there is focus on anything that might help identify this person from that video. So the clothing, obviously, also the mannerisms, the gait, anything that might lead investigators to this suspect. And obviously, you know, tracking down, okay, where did he buy that backpack? Finding out what stores sell that backpack. Even if he bought it in cash, perhaps they could narrow down when it was bought and they would find some surveillance video to show that person. So, you know, that video is really key right now in terms of this investigation. But listen, it is, you know, 11 days now. And really, that's pretty much all they got, as far as we know.
And in terms of that 11 days, you've been watching a lot of this on TV like the rest of us. You were here with us in the studio last night. Our colleague Ed Lavandera has been out there. It's your first day out there. I'm curious how it's different on the ground, seeing it up close and personal versus the rest of us who have been watching this on TV.
Yeah, you know, one thing I was asking myself over the past few days is like, how could somebody drive into a neighborhood and kidnap an 84-year-old lady without anybody noticing? Now that I'm here, I understand why. Obviously, we've got TV lights up. Without these TV lights, this neighborhood is dark, black at night. There are no street lights. All of the houses are kind of behind undergrowth. You can easily see how neighbors wouldn't see a thing, particularly at that time in the morning. You know, there's undergrowth between all these houses, and as I say, no lights. This is a it's not remote, it's a subdivision, but there's not a lot of light. And there is there are big gaps between the homes. So now I understand how this could have happened, how somebody could have driven into this neighborhood and taken Nancy Guthrie without any of her neighbors realizing. Alex?
And that's one of the reasons why people love living in a neighborhood like that, is that they can see the stars, which you couldn't see in a place like Los Angeles. But then the danger of that is what we are seeing right now as well.
Sure.
Nick Watt reporting for us from Tucson. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Joining me now live is CNN law enforcement contributor and retired FBI supervisory special agent Steve Moore. Steve, welcome back to The Story Is. We've been talking every night about this case. You say it's significant that what Nick just said, that they're still out there after dark working this thing.
Yeah, because I mean, I see them going back to Annie's house and Nancy's house and things like this. And I wonder, in the back of my mind, is it just because you've got 40 or 50 evidence response people sitting around in hotels and you want to give them something to do? But if they're running 2 shifts on this, there is something they're looking for. Somebody has a theory of this crime and how it was committed.
When we talked last night, it seemed like everything was moving in the right direction. They got the video out, the Bitcoin letter, they seemed like they had somebody that they were interested in. And then today kind of felt like there wasn't as much activity.
Right.
What does that do to the morale of the investigators out there?
That's going to depend on how much credibility they gave to that lead last night, where they picked up the individual down in Rio Rico, I believe. I suspect that there wasn't a lot of energy behind that one, because what that was a tip that that Nancy was going in and out of this house. They ran the tip. They looked at the guy who lived at that house and said, could be, but I don't think they had anything else. I don't think he was on their radar. So you can't ignore that. But if you notice, the FBI didn't send a whole troop of agents down there.
Yeah. When we've seen these sort of things end, when they really get their guy, it is amazing the amount of people. I remember being in Boston when they finally got the Boston Marathon bombers.
Oh, yeah.
And just seeing the cavalry of law enforcement when they finally got their guy.
Exactly.
That was not what we were seeing last night.
No.
So you mentioned Annie's house. They keep going back to Annie's house. A reminder that Annie is where Nancy Guthrie had dinner with her the night before she disappeared.
Right.
But why so much focus there? What do you read into that?
Somebody's got a theory of the crime that involves that house. There is no investigative reason that, based on the information that I see out there right now, indicates that they should still be looking at Annie's house. That's not the crime scene, according to every bit of evidence that we have. So I have to go back to the fact that they have something else. And part of that something else is they probably have cell phone tracks. They probably have all sorts of data points that they're researching right now based on those cell phones. There's something that gives them a suspicion that something was going on outside of Annie's house.
Today, Aaron Burnett talked with Harvey Levin of TMZ about this new letter that Harvey received with a very interesting demand. Watch this.
Okay.
The letter essentially says, I've tried to get in touch with Savannah's brother and sister to no avail. And they sent it to us then, and they said, if they want to get the name of the individual who is involved in this kidnapping, send the Bitcoin, give us a Bitcoin through this address. And they say time is more than relevant. That's the way it ends. Time is more than relevant. We have sent this on to the FBI and to the Sheriff's Department, and that's all we have heard.
Does that sound like BS to you?
Yes. I think that's a pretty succinct way of saying it. I think somebody else has now got them a wire fraud case going, and they'll be easy to find, probably, like the last one was. You know, the FBI has a $50,000 reward. If you know the name of the person, why don't you just go get it from the FBI instead of committing wire fraud and extortion?
Simply put. Steve Moore, thank you for your insight night after night. It's been really, really helpful.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. We want to remind people If anybody's got any information, we're going to keep putting this number up there. This is the Pima County Sheriff's Department phone number on your screen, 520-351-4900, or you can contact the FBI directly, either via...
And we do have breaking news tonight as investigators are sweeping the area around Nancy Guthrie's home this evening and may have found a potential clue in their search on its 11th day. The New York Post reports tonight that as officials were scouring the roadside less than 2 miles from where Nancy Guthrie lives, they recovered a black glove that you can see here. Obviously, that picture immediately caught everyone's attention, given the footage that was released by the FBI shows the armed individual who approached Guthrie's home and her front door wearing these dark gloves, as you can see here. Right now, what we still don't know as we come on air tonight is whether or not authorities in Arizona believe that is the same glove that was being worn by the person in that doorbell camera footage. The FBI is declining to comment on this new discovery, as a spokesperson for the Pima County Sheriff's Department also said they don't have any details to confirm tonight either. This comes as law enforcement officials tell our colleague John Miller that investigators are also looking at the type of backpack that the person was seen carrying in this camera footage. Of course, when he goes, this person, to get the plant as he was trying to cover up the camera, you can see a pretty good image of what that backpack looked like. John Miller will join us in just a moment with his latest reporting. And all of this is coming tonight as the search for more clues are continuing in new places. That includes the foothills about a mile north of Nancy Guthrie's home, where investigators were seen searching the roadways and combing through shrubs in the desert. One source tells us the FBI agents are looking for anything else that armed individual could have dropped. And this latest search comes after the man who was detained in last night's traffic stop that we were covering here near the Mexico border has now been released. Authorities say that they were following up on incoming leads when they stopped him, and that he was known to investigators before the FBI had released that recovered surveillance footage. A search warrant allowed investigators to not search just his home and his car, but also to question him, and after he was let go, there has been no activity around his home since then. This person told reporters that he hopes investigators can actually find the suspect here so they can clear his name. Authorities have been sorting through more than 4,000 tips we know since the FBI released these shocking and chilling images of the person on Nancy Guthrie's doorstep. Right now, they are offering a $50,000 reward if you can offer any information here. But one thing that has stood out as we have been piecing through the information and what we've learned and the images that we've seen is so far they've remained tight-lipped when it comes to answering any questions about how the investigation is progressing. The FBI has not had a public briefing in nearly a week. When it comes to the Pima County Sheriff's Office, they said they'll call a news conference should a significant development occur. I want to bring in my investigative and legal sources tonight. And as I mentioned, CNN's Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller is here, our former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and also the former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig is here. And John, first, can we start with the image of this glove? Because I know they're not saying whether or not they know or believe that it is the glove the person was wearing as they approached Nancy Guthrie's front door. What are they doing with that glove right now to try to figure out if it was that person's?
Well, they don't know either, but that glove is on its way to the FBI lab at Quantico, and there a host of experts are going to examine it in a very specific order of scientific disciplines because one examination affects another. And they're going to be looking for all of the things that a glove that could have been worn by a perpetrator in this crime might offer. And that includes, number one, potential for DNA on the inside, potential for DNA or perhaps even a full or partial fingerprint on the outside in that it has that smooth, shiny outside, potential for hair or fiber that could tie it to the scene. But overarching fact that we all know that has worried all of us is, remember, the individual who came in appears to have come out from the front door with the victim and that there is blood on that front set of steps leading out to the driveway. If the person who used those gloves to get in the house used those gloves carrying Nancy Guthrie out, there is also the potential, which would be very probative in a case like this in terms of tying that glove not just to a perpetrator, but also to the crime, that there could be traces of her blood on that glove if it's connected to this. The final thing is, this was a good strategy to expand the search in a linear way outward from the crime scene. Finding this glove gives a couple of potential clues beyond itself if it's connected. One, a direction of flight. What way did they leave if they tossed that out the window? And two, to expand that further, because if you tossed a glove out of the car, discarding evidence at that spot, did you toss another one out a mile further and perhaps a ski mask or something else? So the investigative strategy was a smart thing to do. The question is this glove going to be connected or not?
John, can I ask you though, because some people might look at this tonight and say, okay, we're on day 11 of this search. They just found this glove tonight about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, less than 2 miles is what we're told. Are you surprised, John, that they didn't find this sooner?
No, because they know things in the last 48 hours that they didn't know before. Their original searches were in concentric circles out from the house looking for potentially a body that may have been taken out or left, or other evidence in the immediate area. The idea that they now saw this person and they said, there's a mask, there's gloves, there's things that we now know what we're looking for. Seeing a glove on the side of the road 8 days ago might not just have been significant to them, but the idea that they knew what they were looking for and they could go in multiple directions where there's only 2 directions a car could have gone from that house, to go in both directions looking for it was a good call.
Well, and Andrew McCabe, you know, John obviously mentioned the blood that we know was Nancy Guthrie's that was found right outside the front door of the house that matched her. Beyond looking for those potential traces there, the DNA, the fiber, are there other things that the investigators could glean from this glove if it does belong to that person in terms of the size of their hands, you know, matching their profiles? They're still trying to build out who this person was and, you know, potentially where they bought the gloves from, that kind of history or anything like that?
Yeah, certainly. I'm not sure how much they would get from the size of the glove because it's hard to say how hard of a correlation there is between hand size and height or weight. You pretty much are going to get height and fairly consistent weight estimates from just the photographs that we saw yesterday, the photographs that you have, the video that you have up there running on the screen now. But definitely the provenance of the glove, like where does it come from? Who manufactured it? What sort of compounds are in it? And more importantly, who sells that glove? Are there one or is there one or are there multiple locations in the immediate area that sell the glove? Is it something that most people purchase on Amazon? All those the answers to those questions help you create a population of individuals who might be that person on the video. And while the identification of individuals who purchased that glove, either in that area or in the time frame that they think is relevant, that single fact alone may not lead you to the person on the video, but it's the cumulative effect of being able to do that sort of analysis with the glove and then maybe with something else like the backpack, which we know they're also investigating pretty strenuously right now, where the backpack comes from, who sells it, what's the model name, that sort of thing. So when you start to layer those factors on top of each other, that population of purchasers who picked up all of those items starts to get very small and very manageable. And that's of course a group that you then go out and try to find and interview and rule in or out.
John, what can you tell us about the backpack? Because I know you have new reporting on how they're looking at that as well.
Well, the backpack is something that they have been working to identify. We ran similar identifications to see, well, who made this backpack? What kind is it? And it's the same thing that Andy McCabe's talking about. Okay, so who ordered that backpack? Who ordered that backpack around Tucson? Who ordered that backpack, which looks brand new, you know, around Tucson at a time that might be not long before this kidnapping? And at some point, the FBI will likely come out with a set of announcements, which is this glove was made by these people, the backpack by this manufacturer, and so on, to say, you know, do you know somebody who bought these items or has these items?
Yeah. Ellie, I mean, just overall, as we're talking about the make and manufacture of this backpack, it's made by the brand that Walmart carries. We know from John's reporting tonight. The glove, Right now, it's a single glove. We'll see if they find a second one or what exactly that looks like. But they've also gotten 18,000 tips into their lines since those pictures came out as we've been looking at them. And I heard Mary Ellen O'Toole talking to Anderson earlier, talking about the lights in the background, all of this. How are you looking at this tonight?
So first of all, the tips are just a question of personnel. You have to divide them up by subject matter. They're probably falling into certain different buckets, and then it's just a matter of running them down. I know Andy McCabe and John Miller have both done that in their careers. The glove to me is really interesting because there's two investigative questions. One, as John was laying out, is this glove linked to the crime scene? And given all the types of DNA and fingerprint potentialities in that glove, if it was a glove used at the crime scene, odds are pretty good they'll be able to make that connection. That's number one. But then number two is, can they link that glove?
Even if it's been sitting out in the desert zone for 11 days,
yes,
you still think it'll be fine?
DNA and fingerprints can absolutely survive for that long. I've had cases where DNA has survived for years.
Okay.
The second key question, though, is if they make that link, then can they link the glove to a specific person? There is not some universal DNA database that has everyone in the state or everyone in the country's DNA in it. Different states do it differently, but generally speaking, you're only going to have DNA in that database if you've voluntarily given it in for some reason. People sometimes do that for security reasons for children, or if you've been previously arrested. A lot of arrests have mandatory DNA testing upon intake. So you can do it that way, or alternatively, if you have someone who becomes a person of interest, you can get a search warrant and swab them, usually inside the cheek, take a DNA sample from that person and see if it matches.
Are you surprised last night by them detaining this guy, questioning him for hours, searching his home, which they got a search warrant for, obviously, but I mean, understandably, he seemed very shocked by it all when he was speaking today. Does it surprise you that they called someone who seemed that off base to them?
I don't second guess them for that. I think you have to run down every possibility here. And this is a good example of why when prosecutors get search warrants, it's a lower standard. It's probable cause. You don't have to show proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And sometimes you have enough for the search warrant, but it's not the right guy. That's what happened here. I don't fault them at all for trying.
Okay. Ellie Honig, Andy McCabe, John Miller, if you hear anything new, John Miller, please let us know. We'll check back in with you. Anyone at home, I mentioned those 18,000 tips. If you have any information or any of these images or what you're seeing here from the gloves or the backpack stands out to you, please call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI.
News, what could be an important break in the search for Nancy Guthrie. New York Post reporting that investigators combing the area near her home have found a black glove on the side of the road. That's the picture of it. We don't know if it could be one of the gloves worn by the person seen on Guthrie's doorbell camera. CNN reached out to the FBI, which declined a request for comment. CNN's Nick Watt is outside Nancy Guthrie's home right now. First of all, what is the latest there on the scene there, and how far from where your location is was that glove found?
That glove was about 2 miles away from here, Nancy Guthrie's home. And as you mentioned, FBI agents have been searching this area again today, going through the vegetation, the gravel by the side of the road, the arroyos. There's a huge empty lot opposite Nancy Guthrie's home. They were looking for anything that might have been discarded by that person that we see in that Nest camera video from the door with the mask armed. They are looking for anything that person may have discarded, dropped, either coming to or more likely leaving the scene. Now, we've also heard in the past couple of days that agents have also been looking again around Annie Guthrie's home. That is Nancy Guthrie's daughter. She lives about 4 miles away. One neighbor told us that agents had come around about a week ago just canvassing, looking for information. They came back and asked this neighbor if they could look on the back of his property that adjoins Annie Guthrie's home. Now, this video clearly is a major piece of evidence right now. 4,000 tips. One of those tips was somebody who allegedly saw that video and said that they recognized the eyes and the eyelashes underneath the ski mask. And that is what led to that man being detained and questioned last night and then released. So that video, clearly, you can see the gait, you can see the mannerisms, you can see the size of the person. So that and whatever else they can find that might have been dropped by that suspect, they could be key in trying to solve this mystery. Now, Kash Patel of the FBI says, you know, they're looking at persons, plural, persons of interest. No more details on that. Anderson.
Nick Watt, thanks very much. Back with David Sarney, John Miller, Richard Kolko, also joining us at Chip Massey, a former FBI hostage negotiator. Chip, what stands out to you, I mean, in this day of the investigation?
You know, I think really what's interesting is the amount of pressure now that's being exerted. It's kind of like the tables have turned, right? Because what we say is that there's always fear, uncertainty, and doubt in any high conflict situation. And it was the family that was suffering from that, right? There was fear in a ransom note with a deadline. There's uncertainty if you don't have a proof of life. And there's a lot of doubt when somebody is contacting the media instead of the family directly. But now we've got that switch. It's kind of on its head now. Now the captors, their world has gotten so very small. And their pressure is on them. There's national billboards. The president's involved. There is, you know, the tip line. Somebody knows these people.
And John, I keep coming back to a comment somebody made yesterday, which I thought was really, important, which is whoever is involved in this and whoever, may recognize somebody in that video, they very likely have very much altered their behavior over the last week or two. Taking care of a hostage, dealing with all the stuff they have to deal with. So it's not just somebody who may recognize the person in that doorbell image. It has that person disappeared from their job for the week or whatever.
I mean, that's extraordinarily important because it's going to be a life-changing event. That's a person who's going to be kind of off the grid, not around, people who might reach out to him or her. This is a person who's going to say, I don't have time to talk right now. It's going to be the kind of thing that is a full-time occupation. And as Chip said, it's also going to be a person who is going to appear to be under unusual stress or pressure. Again, this is for somebody who thought they might do a kidnapping that might be a bit of a blip in the news. It's become a runaway train.
Yeah, I mean, David, have you found that, I mean, in your many decades career with the New York Police Department, that people think they can, do something, they can do a burglary, do a crime, but it's a lot harder, the pressure on them, all of it, it takes a toll.
Absolutely, because I do not think anyone thought the magnitude of all the resources available to law enforcement would be put upon this case. Again, this comes back to, did they know who they were abducting personally? Did they have an idea who that person was? And I don't think they realized the wrath that they would face by law enforcement, how detail-oriented the police department, the FBI are involved in this case. They are scouring, and the work that they're doing is Herculean, if you look at it that way, because you thought you got away with this, and now you realize how much law enforcement, the resources they have available to find you. And it does put pressure, and I guarantee you, if this is more than one person, one of them is going to crack and just do something out of the ordinary that they've already been doing.
Chip, the TMZ note about Bitcoin for ransom, does that at this stage seem real to you?
Could be, right? You're going to see all kinds of people come out of the woodwork, right? Whenever this much money is on the line, whenever it has this kind of celebrity around it. So it's an expenditure of resources. We got to, track that down, see if there's any validity to it. But that's a part of the constant ongoing of information gathering and pressure from the public.
And Richard, I mean, the items we saw in the video released yesterday, the backpack, the flashlight, the firearm, how planned out does this seem to you, given the fact that this person, I don't know, maybe seems surprised by this camera and is, using shrubbery to try to cover it in some way that seems unimaginable?
I don't think it was overly planned out. I think as far as his preparation, like the jacket he wore was very unique. That'll be easy to determine what kind of jacket it was. As you said, your people have already figured out what kind of backpack it was. They'll figure out the shoes and the rest of the equipment that he has and where that was purchased, who manufactured it, what stores it ended up in. Those are a whole separate group of leads that are being followed up on by detectives, special agents, and others, and that will help narrow things down. Just by having his better description now, you can eliminate a lot of people, and that makes it more fine-tuned investigation. We know it's not somebody 6'4". We know it's not somebody below 5'7". There's lots of things they can do to eliminate things, and the more you can eliminate, the more fine-tuned you can get towards your investigation. And the FBI and their partners are very good at this.
Yeah, Richard Kolko, David Sarney, Chip Massey, John Miller, thank you very much. Take a look at this image. It's from the New York Post, which says it's a black glove that FBI agents recovered from the roadside 1.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. Now, this is video of them actually finding it. The glove, again, according to the Post, resembles the one worn by the armed individual caught on Ms. Guthrie's doorbell camera the night she disappeared 2 Sundays ago. We do not know whether it is, in fact, one and the same. What we do know is that the FBI has been conducting what it calls a, quote, extensive search along multiple roadways near the Guthrie home. What's not clear is whether authorities believe it is to be the same glove. Now, they and other authorities are also dealing with the thousands of calls they've gotten since the doorbell camera video was released, 4,000 in the last 24 hours, 18,000 since Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. Tonight, a lot of attention on the kidnapper's backpack. We know investigators are looking at images of it closely. CNN has cross-referenced the backpack, and it appears to be an Ozark Trail hiker. There's a lot we could learn in the hour ahead. In addition to our team of law enforcement experts tonight, we have CNN's Jake Tapper live from the Pima County Sheriff's Office and Nick Watt at the home. I want to start with Jake Tapper. So what more do we know about where the investigation stands and the tips that are coming in? I mean, thousands of them. It's remarkable.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, ever since the 3 videos and 6 still images were released by the FBI yesterday afternoon, roughly 4,000 tips have come in to the Pima County Sheriff's Office. That's on top of another 14,000 since Nancy Guthrie disappeared on Sunday, February 1st. So that's a total of 18,000 tips. Obviously, some tips are worth more than others, but law enforcement officials, federal, local, state, are combing through, trying to figure out if any of these tips are worthwhile. There was a tip that came in yesterday, we're told, and obviously that resulted in somebody being detained and questioned, a gentleman by the name of Carlos, but he was released. There were no charges against him. He said he had nothing to do with this. But the search, the hunt continues. It remains an active investigation and a tragic story that we still hope has a peaceful and happy ending. But it is a tough, difficult slog right now.
Yeah, Jake Tapper, thanks. We'll check in with Jake throughout the hour as warranted. We're joined now by our panel of experts, former NYPD Detective David Sarney, retired FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, CNN Chief Law Enforcement Intelligence Analyst John Miller, and retired FBI hostage negotiator Richard Kolko. First of all, John, let's start out with you. Just today, I mean, the finding of this glove, how important is that, potentially?
It could be very important. So, you know, you walk into it on the assumption that this is connected. Then you bag it, you send it to the FBI lab at Quantico, and they have enormous capability. What could be in there? Could be in DNA.
Yeah, let's put up pictures of the glove, both from the doorbell camera and also gloves from that post photo.
Could be DNA from skin cell, could be sweat DNA, could be a hair that was transferred from the person to their hand to the glove. So it's a potential really great collection point if it's connected. And it's also a validation of what they went to do. The idea of extending the search out, because they knew something starting yesterday or the day before that they didn't know at the beginning, which is, this is what we're looking for. We might be looking for a ski mask. We know we might be looking for a glove. We might be looking for a discarded backpack. The idea that they extended that search area out, and it also suggests if you find one glove that appears to be on the road, the kind of place it would be if you'd thrown it out the window of a moving car, extend the search more to another mile and see if you find the other one, or maybe the ski mask, the kinds of things that someone would have used as a disguise during the actual job, but that they would not have wanted to get caught with in a car stop if they were pulled over. So I think that it's important that they're doing what they're doing.
And David, I mean, it's interesting because that glove, which in the surveillance video with the door cam, it looks strange. I mean, it looks sort of like it's puffy or blown up. It's not like a tight rubber glove on somebody's hands. It looks very much like there could be other gloves underneath it, which may be, I guess, in case there was a cut to stop any DNA from getting out.
Absolutely, because when we talk about gloves, everyone thinks about rubber gloves, but there's always different types of gloves. So I guarantee you, not only are they analyzing the glove, they're going to look at the type of glove it is. They're going to look at the manufacturer for that glove. They're going to see if there's any purchases or sales of that.
If in fact the photo from the Post is the glove that was found, if there's other gloves underneath it, that would be a blow because it lessens the chance there's DNA.
There is a chance, and you take a chance for everything. The whole thing about this, is it probative? Yes. You know, if it's the glove, will there be something, will be trace evidence on that glove? There's a hope and a potential of that. Given the fact it's about a mile of change away, that gives you something as a lead. Like everything else, leads, you exhaust them till you get the answer. And this is a question, and can we answer it with the DNA analysis afterwards?
And you look for that slip, which is, let's say the person puts the gloves on not to leave DNA, but let's say instead of being double gloved, he put the one glove on with one hand and then the other glove with the gloved hand. That still gives you a chance that there's human DNA on one of the two gloves.
Is it possible with a rubber glove to have a fingerprint impression?
Always possible. The thing is, we don't know the size of the individual's hand in there, how he got the glove on, because again, we're looking for the mistakes. That's how investigators look. This is a mistake by throwing the glove out there and leaving the glove and having the opportunity to obtain it. Even though it's far away from the residence, it doesn't matter. It's still a probative piece of evidence that they're going to use. And again, you have one glove, where's the second glove? Where's the backpack? All these things. Was he disposing of these items as he went? That backpack was filled of something. We do not know. But the gloves, if this person felt they can get rid of one glove, and if they're taking that glove off, they're taking it off with their hand, with their other glove, and then maybe that's the other glove that was removed. So we don't know. We'll figure it out.
And again, we don't know if this glove found on the side of the road is the glove that's seen in the video. Remarkable, though, that they would find a glove all this time later on the side of this road, not far from the house. Mary Ellen, I mean, what stands out to you, questions you have about the glove, what else we've seen today?
Well, I think finding the glove is important, and they have no choice but to send it back here to the FBI laboratory. And I think sometimes the general public thinks in terms of, well, would somebody that is this organized, would they really be throwing evidence out the car window or getting rid of it? Yeah, they would, for exactly the reasons that John stated, that something may have happened, they don't want it in the car with them, so they toss some things out the window. And I think that's why you see the agents and the investigators walking through that area to make sure that they are looking for any other evidence that might have been thrown out. And the other thing that's important, again, is that if these people are familiar with this area, they may have been up there before, and they may have discarded things that they were using or that they had in the car with them on a prior occasion. So it's a lot of work and it's tedious, but it's critical that they be able to do this.
And just one more observation, which is, we know there's blood on that front step outside that front door.
Is there blood in the glove?
And we know that DNA came back to Nancy Guthrie. So it's if the person who went in with that glove carried a person out with that glove, there's a good possibility you could have trace amounts of blood or more.
Richard, when you hear these numbers coming in through the tip line, 18,000 calls, 4,000 just the last 24 hours, from your own experience on cases, you know, how much of the substance of those calls do you think results in actionable information? How do you get enough manpower, women power, to go through 18,000 tips?
That's what the FBI is trained at doing. They have a command post that's run by intelligence analysts, intelligence agents, and what they're doing is, you're right, 18,000 or recently 4,000 leads that come in. You're not going to just do them in the order they come in. So there's people that are trained at this. They do an assessment and they prioritize those leads. And then what they do is they say, Anderson, here's the 10 leads I need you to cover. Rich, here's your 15 leads. John, here's your dozen or so. And agents have to go out, carry out that lead, come back, do the paperwork. They have to re-enter that into the system. And the paperwork's a little different than just normal FBI paperwork, because there's a lot of different agencies that don't necessarily have access to the way the FBI does paperwork. So there's a lead-generated system, but they all use that system together. And then after that, after they enter the results of their investigation, then there are analysts that look at that again, because maybe one lead that John Miller followed up on and one lead I followed up on could lead to another lead. So it's not just those 4,000 that have come in since the photos. There's going to be more leads, and we can expect this to continue on and on, which is exactly what we want to happen. Exactly what we heard Savannah Guthrie say in that last video message. Please pick up the phone, and that's important.
So, John Miller, does that mean that those 18,000 calls, a human has heard every one and quickly made an assessment of, like, it goes in this basket of, you know, high importance, lesser importance? Is that how, I mean, has a human done it, or is there AI programs now?
No, there's a human doing this. And if it's coming into the Pima County Sheriff's Office, it's coming into their command center for these leads. If it's going to the FBI number, it's probably going to the National Threat Assessment Center, where this is what they do for a living, is they take calls about, you know, threats and information. And they have a system where once they get the lead in, they'll actually do the workup on the lead. They'll run the address, the phone numbers, the records on that person, and then push as a package to that lead center.
And are those leads left on a voicemail, or is it like a human answering the phone?
No, there's somebody taking that information.
Because I imagine somebody may not want to leave a phone number.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, people may want to leave a contact number, they may not. But, you know, when you're dealing with that volume of leads, you know, they've got thousands, but just since the video, they took in 4,000 leads. So let's say that 5% of those are actually actionable. That's a couple of hundred leads where you're going to send out, you know, ideally, instead of sheriff's guys going with sheriff's guys and FBI goes with FBI, you would pair them up, agent and sheriff, together and send teams out so everybody's getting the same information back.
Mary Ellen, when you look at the video that came out yesterday, as a profiler, what stands out to you?
Well, the video to me is really important, and I've watched it several times today, and there's some interesting things that I'm seeing on the video that I didn't see yesterday. And one of the things is there are lights in the background that don't seem to be lights associated with other homes in the area, almost to suggest that maybe there was a second person there. There's also something by the flowers where the offender or the subject goes to pick up those flowers and then comes back to the camera. That seems to be some kind of a box. So the question is, did the offender bring that box, or was that something that was already there? If Nancy had an external key to the house, where was that maintained? And again, I think I've heard a lot of people say, well, this is somebody that's obviously not very familiar with cameras or how they work. And that may be true, that he was a little bit awkward with the camera, but the way he was dressed, and again, the way he came in to address the camera situation, I mean, this was someone that was prepared to address whatever issues he had to before he entered that house. And that, again, underscores for me that this is somebody that has been on that porch before and has done a surveillance of that area, again, which underscores the importance of doing a search around that house.
Yeah, I don't know if we can take that image that's on the right that I circled in full, because you do see that the light that Mary Ellen is talking about. There's not another house, Mary Ellen, right across from there.
And if you look at it even a little bit closer, when the offender gets up close to the camera with the flowers that he's holding, that light seems to be even a little bit brighter. There could be explanations for that, but I think we've all considered the possibility that, yes, this could be a loner, but it's also possible that there was somebody else with him.
Tonight, still no suspects. Law enforcement desperately searching around Nancy Guthrie's home now after canvassing her older daughter Annie Guthrie's neighborhood yesterday. We've seen both Annie and Cameron Guthrie flanking their famous sister in the series of emotional videos that Savannah's posted on Instagram. Jason Carroll is out front now with a closer look at the Guthrie siblings at the heart of this.
We beg you now to return our mother to us.
Throughout their horrific ordeal, Savannah Guthrie's siblings have been at her side.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy.
Guthrie's brother, Cameron, is the oldest of the three. He's a retired military pilot who once served with the Vermont Air National Guard.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Charles Guthrie, and I'm Savannah's big brother.
The Today Show featured the eldest Guthrie with his baby sister when he took her on a special flight back in 2012.
Call it Operation Twisted Sister.
I'll be in the front, and you'll be sitting in the back.
Guthrie later noted her brother served his country as an F-16 pilot for 26 years before retiring. He delivered the second social media message from the family last Thursday.
I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you.
Guthrie's older sister Annie has also spoken on a social media post from the siblings.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon.
Guthrie's older sister is a jeweler and a writer who has taught creative writing courses at the University of Arizona. She has written 2 books, one about jewelry design, the other book of poems, and is married to Tommaso Siomi, who is a teacher. Nancy Guthrie was last seen by her family the evening before she disappeared. She had gone to dinner at her daughter's home, and family took her back home that same night. Guthrie has spoken about the close bond she shares with her sister.
Annie's like the blood going through my veins. She's my sister. She's always been there all my life. My sister and I are like the sun and the moon. Together we make a whole.
This from a 2017 Today Show segment featuring the 2 of them.
Annie and I were both headed off to college, and we both decided to live at home. And we had a spoken or unspoken pact that on the weekends, even though we were college girls, one of us would always stay home on one of the weekend nights so that my mom wouldn't be alone. That was just something we did together as sisters.
Annie Guthrie giving these thoughts during the family's desperate plea for their mother's release.
Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Jason Carroll, CNN, New York.
News TMZ's Harvey Levin has some new reporting on the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Obviously, he's been breaking news from the start and received the initial ransom note for Guthrie. TMZ is now reporting they've received a new note today from someone who said they are not the kidnapper, but they know who the kidnapper is. And then this individual demanded 1 Bitcoin, which is currently valued about $67,000, in exchange for the information about the kidnapper. So TMZ founder Harvey Levin is now out front. So Harvey, okay, you got a lot of new information here, but I guess let's just start with this note that you've received. You said they've got a Bitcoin address in there, different than the one in the original note, obviously, because this person's saying they're a different person. You verified that note. So what can you tell us? Has any payments, activity on this new address, and what about this letter?
We haven't seen any. The letter essentially says, I've tried to get in touch with Savannah's brother and sister to no avail. And they sent it to us then, and they said, if they want to get the name of the individual who is involved in this kidnapping, send the Bitcoin, give us a Bitcoin through this address. And they say time is more than relevant. That's the way it ends. Time is more than relevant. We have sent this on to the FBI and to the Sheriff's Department, and that's all we have heard. You know, I was thinking about this. Doing it this way, I'm not sure is a crime. Now, if this is a ruse and they are just trying to get money without having information, then it's a crime. But I'm not sure the letter itself is a crime. What they're saying is, I'm willing to give you information, but I want a Bitcoin. I'm not sure that's a crime.
I mean, so when you look at a letter like this, I mean, obviously you could think of it as a ruse. This is a person trying to jump on this and get $67,000 and then give you nothing. I mean, obviously we all can see that that's possible. But as you look at it, is there anything that stands out to you to suggest that this person does know who the kidnapper is or doesn't know?
No, honestly, no. The FBI certainly wanted it, as did the Sheriff's Department. And that's about all I can tell you about it, Aaron.
All right. So I'm also curious, Harvey, how you think about it this way. I mean, I was saying the rough value of a Bitcoin, right, is $67,000. Now, the FBI has a reward of $50,000 for information, which would ostensibly be much more difficult to collect, obviously. But I guess if whoever sent this note does know who the kidnapper is, you know, how do you kind of think through the logic here as to why they do this to try to get the 67 as opposed to, you know, calling the FBI and doing the right thing and getting 50?
Because there have been cases in the past, I think we've all covered them, Aaron, where the reward money is not given to somebody you would think at first blush is the person who helped solve the crime.
Yeah.
We've seen that before. So this is, I guess you would say, a bird in the hand.
Right. I'm just thinking, obviously very different circumstances, but, the comment made by the White House about paying out on Maduro, right, and that they would avoid paying that out. All right. So, last night we were talking about the payment, right? And you had said that there was a payment to the Bitcoin account in the original ransom letter, which you received, right? And then that payment came, and then fast and furious, right? They took this individual in who it turned out was not related to this, and that was wrong. But that is fast and furious what led to that. But nonetheless, the money had gone into that Bitcoin account that you had in that letter. Have you seen anything else going on with that account?
No, but there was just a boatload of information on social media last night that 15 minutes or so after we saw activity in that account, there was another Bitcoin account that somebody found where he said that somebody deposited $6 million. And a lot of people were speculating that the $6 million was actually the ransom money. And that is the correct amount. So we did some checking with law enforcement today, and we can tell you that $6 million is unrelated to the Nancy Guthrie case.
So unrelated, even though the amount is $6 million, that it's unrelated?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's obviously very significant. Now, also, Harvey, you've been talking to your sources, I know, about what anybody watching has seen or had conversations about, which is a lot of theories and rumors that are out there about what happened here, including things like the car near Nancy Guthrie's home that was towed away by authorities, Nancy Guthrie's family members. What are they telling you?
I spent some time on the phone today on this with law enforcement. And what I can tell you is they have come up with goose eggs. They have looked for 10 days to find surveillance video or something meaningful to help them figure out what car this person used to get there and to escape. And they have not found it yet, not for lack of trying, and they're still looking. But so far, they are stymied. That was a little bit surprising to me, but they have hit a series of dead ends.
Which is pretty incredible to think about it. You also have, and this is interesting, Harvey, because we look at the backpack and, the reporting tonight, the New York Post got a picture of FBI agents picking up that glove about a mile from Nancy Guthrie's home that may or may not be related to the glove that we all saw in the doorbell cam footage. But you've been trying to figure out who made the glove, the backpack, the gun, the holster, all of it, right? Because all of this could say a lot, what this person was wearing and where they got it from. So what are you finding on this?
Here's what I'm finding. It just seemed obvious to me that what they were going to do, what law enforcement was going to do, is they were going to track down, who bought some of these things from a store in the Tucson area, because they do believe this person is from that area, or Amazon or something like that. So I have confirmed with law enforcement that is exactly what they're doing. And what I'm told, and I'm going to have to refer to my notes, that the three items they were particularly interested in were the backpack, the gloves, and the gun. So let me talk about the backpack. Because what we found this morning was there were reflective pieces on this backpack, and we matched them, we believed, to this Walmart Ozark trail hiker backpack, and they have the same reflective marks on them. And just a little bit ago, KOLD said that law enforcement told them that is indeed the backpack, this Walmart Ozark trail hiker backpack. So, that's something that would be relevant, certainly, to police, to the FBI, to figure out, did somebody buy that, in the last few days? Now, it could have been something somebody had for a long time. I think more interesting, Aaron, is the gun. Because if you look at that gun, it seems like there is a polyester holster on it. Now, I don't know that much about firearms, but we've done some digging. And what we're told is that type of holster typically carries a revolver. And in this case, it was a semi-automatic handgun. So what occurred to us is that if somebody showed up with an odd sort of weapon in that type of holster, that might have been noticed by somebody, say at a gun range. So we've been calling around gun ranges to find out if they saw anybody with that type of holster, just because it was a little bit odd. We had no luck, but I know authorities are looking at just that. So these three things, the backpack, the gloves, and the gun, are things that they're particularly interested in. And again, you know, if somebody goes into a Home Depot, say, and they buy one of these items, even if they pay cash, they have records of who bought, of when it was purchased. And then you look at the surveillance video and you say who picked it out off the shelf and took it to the cash register. And that's the way a lot of crimes are solved. And I know that's one of the things law enforcement is trying to do right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, as you said, you don't know when they bought the backpack, but obviously Walmart will cooperate, right? I mean, they can see every single one of those Ozark Trailblazer backpacks, when they were bought and where they were bought. You know, I mean, one of these things could end up being very significant. We don't know. All right, and Harvey, just one quick thing, just to triple check here. The account last night that the money was wired into, the original one, you haven't seen anything new in that one, right? Breaking news, law enforcement has identified the specific type of backpack worn by the person captured on Nancy Guthrie's surveillance camera. That is according to TMZ founder Harvey Levin, who just shared that with us moments ago. And it comes as FBI agents are searching again near Nancy Guthrie's home. CNN crews saw them this afternoon, specifically the land along the road where her home is located. And as you can see, there's thick brush and cacti along that stretch, as you see here. Out front now is Laura Gargano. She is Nancy Guthrie's neighbor and has lived near Nancy's home for 11 years. Laura, what a bizarre and frightening situation that you and all of your neighbors are living through right now, and to even imagine what you're going through. They're looking, I know, around your home. They're talking to neighbors. They're searching the foothills in the neighborhood, trying to look for any kind of evidence connected to her disappearance and the man on that doorbell camera. What did you notice today, Laura?
I noticed this morning, thank you for inviting me. I noticed this morning when driving around before I had read the reports that there were groups of people around on the outskirts of the neighborhood, which I hadn't seen before on the main thoroughfares. We have a thoroughfare to the south of us called River Road, and a thoroughfare that's a main thoroughfare from the foothills down through University of Arizona and south called Campbell Avenue. And I saw groups of people along those areas. So I assumed that they were searchers, though they weren't identified, you know, with any official, you know, jackets, FBI or Sheriff's Department.
So I know that you, Laura, there have been the images of Nancy Guthrie's roof, and that, you know, that there had been a tip from somebody that maybe people had been up there and to go up there and they went and they retrieved something. We don't know exactly, you know, how important that might have been, but that tip was important for them. And I know that you're the one who told them to do that. You said, look at her roof. You also said to look at the septic tank. These are really important things, and we saw images of them obviously doing exactly as you had suggested. Why did you think it was important to make those specific suggestions?
Well, regarding the roof, I had been talking with a friend of mine who's a very detailed person as well, and we were discussing the situation, and she said, did you notice the roof? And we both looked at the image, and we both agreed that that roof looked recently recoated. Not that I thought there could be something up there, but I hadn't seen them on the roof previously. And I would assume that when you're investigating a case, you want to inspect every inch of that property. So I was glad to see that they were on the roof the next morning. I assume it was probably because I spoke directly with them about it. Maybe it's a coincidence. And then I did speak with someone about the septic tank because I was not sure. The FBI agents who were there at that time were aware that we have septic tanks, and there's a big hole in the ground that is usually like the size of a manhole cover. And I wanted to make sure that they were aware that that existed. And then I saw the image that they searched. So I was glad that they did that.
Well, I mean, these are important things, and obviously showing that they're talking to neighbors and you're giving that information is making a big difference. When you saw the video that came out yesterday that the FBI released of the armed and masked person at Nancy Guthrie's front door, obviously this is your neighbor, this is your neighborhood, this is a terrifying situation. What was your reaction when you saw that?
It was startling and a bit terrifying, but it immediately I immediately went to assessing the physique of this person. I immediately could see the physique of this, of the size of the head, the shape of the legs, the probably approximate weight, just to see if he looked familiar. I assumed it was a male. It looks like a male, and I immediately started running through the list of people that I've worked with here. And as I may have mentioned earlier to your producer, that a lot of times people share service people in the area. It's not out of the ordinary for the same yard service to be on 3 or 4 different properties, to give referrals to your neighbors or roofers or electricians. So I just immediately looked to see if the shape looked familiar to me, and I immediately did that, more so than being fearful, but also hopeful, because now we have an image to go by. So momentarily, I pulled out some hope. Hope was waiting for a while, but I pulled out some hope.
Search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. The New York Post is just reporting that investigators have found a black glove in an area near Nancy Guthrie's home. Now, these are images that the New York Post took at the scene, which we are just getting from them here on Out Front. The Post reporter who was there and saw this is going to join me in just a moment. She reports that the glove, quote, resembles the pair worn by the armed perpetrator caught on video. And you'll see exactly why. And you can see clearly in the video recorded by Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera the night she disappeared, someone wearing gloves, a mask, and carrying a gun. Now, it's not clear if authorities at this moment believe this to be the same glove, but I want to show you the moment recorded by the Post when the glove was recovered.
Is that a glove?
And then they got close-ups as well to look at it in detail. But you can see it there right on the side of the road, and the reporter will tell you, just near Nancy Guthrie's home. And this development comes as the FBI says they have been conducting a, quote, extensive search along multiple roadways near the home. CNN, in fact, saw multiple people in FBI gear walking along the road, knocking on doors, talking to neighbors. The Pima County Sheriff's Department says that they have received nearly 18,000 tips since the day Guthrie was reported missing. More than 4,000 of those calls, they say, have come in just the past 24 hours. And now tonight, TMZ is reporting it received an email today from someone purporting to know who Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper is. That email then demanded a single Bitcoin, which is worth about $67,000 right now, in exchange for the information. Now, Harvey Levin, founder of TMZ, of course, received that email, and he's going to be our guest in just a few moments with much more on that and news he's breaking this hour. But first, I want to go to Ed Lavandera because he's on the ground in Tucson. Ed, so much searching going on there. What are you learning tonight?
Well, we're seeing this day of searching and recanvassing the area around Nancy Guthrie's home, which comes after a very chaotic night, as we saw and heard the news breaking of a subject being taken into custody, but then being released after several hours of questioning. We saw FBI agents returning back here, not just to the street where Nancy Guthrie lives, which we saw a small team of FBI agents combing through the area here as well, but we've seen it in extended parts of the neighborhood as well, as they kind of methodically walk along the edges of the road, looking for anything that might have been discarded, anything that might have been missed over the course of these searches in the last 11 days. Authorities aren't saying exactly or talking much about what exactly may or may not have been found. They're not going to acknowledge much of that at this point, but it's clear that after everything that we saw unfold last night, that searching and continuing to go back to do that kind of just tedious detective work and working the grounds and doing whatever you can to find something in hopes of finding something that might have been missed in the last 11 days, that's what they're doing. Even that, as thousands of tips are pouring in more than 24 hours after the release of the video and still images captured by the doorbell camera next to Nancy's front door. So all of that work. But the bottom line is here, once again, on day 11, Aaron, there is no sign of where Nancy Guthrie might be or what her fate might be, and no word on any more suspects or persons of interest that might be wanted even for just questioning. Aaron?
All right, Ed, thank you very much. It's unbelievable. It's day 11. Thank you, Ed. Out front now, the New York Post reporter I just mentioned who was with officials when they found the glove, Georgia Worrell. And Georgia, I really appreciate your time. So you were there. I mean, what can you tell us about the moment that officials found this glove?
I mean, it all happened so quickly, but basically a photographer who's here working for the Post and we were just in the right place at the right time. And we saw a couple of cars just freshly pulled over to the side of the road, and officers looking at just at the time what appeared to be a black object on the side of the road. And as we got closer, we thought it might be a glove. And then all of a sudden, somebody appeared, one of the FBI agents with a bag, and he put the black object in the bag. It wasn't until later when I saw the high resolution photos that the photographer had taken that we did realize that it was a glove.
So obviously, I mean, it sounds like, you know, you're coming upon them. Was this sort of just I mean, where were they? Where were you? Was this sort of something that had been abandoned on the side of the road, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, it had just been discarded on the side of the road. It was actually, I mean, if you were just walking past it, you would have seen it. We were about 1.4 miles south from Nancy Guthrie's house. And on Thursday, that's where officers and agents were canvassing. So we just happened to be on the road when those agents pulled over and saw that they were looking at something, and we just kept following them. So,
and you got all those high resolution pictures. So let me ask you, Georgia, because when you were able to look at those, I mean, there was obviously the object, but then when you're able to look at your pictures and compare them to the images that we have all seen in the doorbell camera footage of, you know, what appears to be a glove on that person's hand right there, did it look to you, as you compare the two, that it could be the same type of glove?
It does appear that way to me. However, I'm no glove expert, and we only have those photos. So, and the sun was kind of glaring off of the glove. So I'm really curious to see what investigators are going to be saying in the next couple of days about them. But yes, I mean, off the bat, it certainly seems that way.
All right. Well, Georgia, thank you very much for sharing what you did see today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, and everyone is here with me now. So, John, you hear Georgia going through what she saw, and then you could see the images because they were able to get her and her photojournalist with her, the close high-res images. And this is 1.4 miles, she said, from Guthrie's home, and you could see literally right along the side of the road they got it, and it didn't look like it had been sitting there for that long. When they picked it up, it was just sitting on the top of the scrub. What does that tell you, and what are you hearing?
Well, it tells me that they found what they were looking for. Now, we don't know if this glove is connected to this crime,
right.
But as she points out, and as we can see for ourselves, it is certainly ballpark for the image we see on that video camera as similar enough to be very promising. The point of it is, though, is if you're in the middle of an abduction and, you know, you're in a car with ski masks and gloves and who knows what else, the idea of not being stopped or discarding all of that in one place lends itself towards a scenario where you toss this one out the window here. You toss the other glove, you know, 2 miles after that. You toss the ski mask here. The ski mask is the kind of thing that an abductor might have kept so that when they get to wherever the holding place was, the victim couldn't see their face. On the other hand, it's not the kind of thing you want to get stopped with. So I like the theory of doing that grid search down the road and saying what could have been tossed from a car, because this is promising.
Right. Now, of course, we're on day 11, Wally, which I think, you know, some would say, gosh, what are we on day 11 and this is happening now? But I mean, this case has confounded everyone. So you obviously are a hostage negotiator. So you've been in these situations, also as a homicide detective. What could investigators potentially learn from a glove? If this is the glove, we don't know if it is, but if it is, how much could you learn from it?
Oh boy, this is such a great piece of evidence. When I say great piece of evidence, it means that we go with the fact that it is the glove until we can prove differently. But from that glove, there's so much in Quantico what the forensic team can get. For instance, they can get hair and fibers from the inside. They can get DNA. They can get cells. They can find out even the lot and block number where that material was made. It's an unbelievable piece of evidence. They may not have the perp on this one, but they will find out where that glove came
Could they
to.
even get a fingerprint from the inside?
It's kind of hard, but stranger things have happened.
So, you know, Bob Krieger, as we're looking at a side-by-side of those two images, obviously these teams, these are FBI that were picking that glove up today, but we know SWAT teams are out there nonstop. You've just retired from one in Pima County just days ago. So when we watch them, in the case of this glove, right, they're going, this is the side of the road, so it's sort of, you know, rocks and some dust. And then there's obviously the cacti and the shrub, which maybe from a distance don't look dense, but when you're in them, certainly feel that way. So knowing the area as well as you do, what do you think when you see a glove like this being picked up and a grid search now going so carefully down the road?
Well, I think it's an excellent job by the investigators to have expanded their search to be 1.5 miles away from the location and continue looking for any piece of evidence. The terrain around Tucson, even in Nancy's neighborhood where we're at now, it's rough. You know, I've worked it for 30 years, and it's easy to miss things. So, you know, if they hadn't searched that area, or they had, and it showed up, if nothing else, it's another lead to follow up on. But with the terrain, with the desert, with the brush, like you said, things can be missed, and that's, I'm sure, why investigators have continued to come back to the area and continued to go over some of the same places that they had been to in the past.
Yeah, and you know, obviously when you think about just the vastness of the space you're looking at, on the one hand you could say, gosh, we're 11 days in, they've just picked this up. On another, it is a needle in a haystack and they finally found this. I mean, Casey Jordan, as a criminologist, when you see the glove that was found on the side of the road, which may or may not have anything to do with the one in the images from the doorbell camera, you got to look at the doorbell camera images. And what do you notice about the gloves in that video?
Well, they are thick on the hands, and there's a lot of speculation that the guy on the porch is wearing 2 sets of gloves. He's doubled up his gloves. And that might be challenging because if this glove did belong to the guy on the porch and he cast it out of a car window or on foot into the brush, there may not be any skin cells or DNA if he had a glove on underneath it, right? So there's a lot going on here, but I've got to say that does, just at first pass, seem to match. So this is, as Wally Zime says, an incredible piece of evidence. And these neoprene gloves are relatively expensive for tradesmen. They don't just, you know, wear them once and cast them away. They usually wear them until they're worn out. So the idea that it is just cast on the side of the road, you know, in full view, I'm surprised it wasn't found before, really does kind of highlight we are guardedly hopeful that this will track back to the guy on the porch. This is an amazing find today.
You know,
go ahead,
I just wanted to say one thing. One of the things that was so grateful at Quantico with their crime scene and their forensic unit is they have botanists that work there, and they can actually tell if there's any foliage on that glove from the area where, remember he took the foliage?
He grabbed the flowers to stick in front of the camera.
Right, and they can actually tell the difference between poison ivy and rose leaf. But they're that excellent, they're that meticulous.
Wow. So John, you know, the context here, of course, is that 24 hours ago, you know, there were people at the FBI who thought this was done. You know, they had their guy, they had their that this was it, 100% wrapped up, and then they didn't. Okay, so where are we now, right? Did they have a whole lot of other people, or was it sort of, okay, we got this guy, all eggs in one basket, everybody's there, and now all of a sudden you're scrambling?
So I wouldn't say that, and I say that based on my conversations with people around the case yesterday was we developed this guy as a lead before the video was released. We compared him to the video. He fits ballpark for the build and things like that. We established probable cause, which they didn't go into in detail, and a judge read that and gave us a search warrant for the car and the house. But when I pressed on, is this person a suspect, they were crystal clear. And we said this a lot on the air last night. This is someone who's being detained for questioning only. It was a signal, it was a tell that we don't know if we're going to charge this guy, but we know we need to talk to him because of those elements. And I think when you look at the interview he gave to the media afterwards, if you listen to his mother-in-law last night, they were like, search the house, ask me the questions, didn't lawyer up, answered the questions.
Right.
So it's likely he's eliminated. But I also say there's nothing wrong with that. As Wally would tell you from these cases, suspects will emerge and they'll look great. And your job is to do two things. You go into it the right way. You say, let's prove this guy didn't do it. Can we eliminate him?
Right, and if you can't do that.
It's better than let's try to prove he did do it with what we can find.
So Casey, how do you see it in terms of where they are right now? I mean, we talked about the tips that have come in. They said, what, 18,000 since this began, but we're on day 11. And they say 4,000 of them came in just the past 24 hours alone. Obviously, volume is a good thing if you could potentially get an answer. It's also a real challenge to sift through it.
Absolutely. And 4,000 in one day. Okay. So, and we saw what happened yesterday. The tip was made in good faith. They explored it in good faith. It didn't pan out. The guy was released. All right. Expect that to happen a few more times. It's just the way things work. At the same time, the guy on the porch probably has seen this footage and probably is in complete breakdown panic mode right now, and probably has changed his behavior. And that could really bring people who are in his inner circle or who know him into the mindset that I need to make a phone call. So we need to not just be looking for the eyelashes and the eyebrows and the lips and the mustache and the build and the shoes and the, American Eagle fleece. We need to think about somebody whose behavior has changed dramatically, who's making a run for the border, who's trying to get out of town, who you haven't heard from for a week. That's the kind of combination of information. I know it will be a long slog, but it will work. I'm very confident that they're going to get this guy.
So, Bob, how are the teams on the ground seeing? I mean, all the men and women that you've worked with for so many years. Obviously, they're just working day and night to try to get an answer here. How do they feel about the search right now?
I'm sure they're getting tired, but at the same time, they're ready to go. All of them, from the detectives, the investigators, the SWAT elements, in ready to go mode and wanting to do their best to help the family and help find Nancy. And like everyone said, this is probably going to happen 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 more times. They're going to follow up on every lead, especially if it involves a person. They're going to get there, check it out, and either confirm or deny that it's viable, and just keep working it like they would and following up on as many of those tips as they can.
Wally, how do you see it? I'm just, a lot of people, when they talk about this, they say, well, if you look at the Tsarnaev brothers, right? It took a few days, but they got them. The Brown shooter, we often, when a story is in the public media lens, we don't see person after person brought in publicly. At least we're not aware of it, right?
Correct.
As we are in this case.
Well, what's the most important thing is that they have people that they're looking at.
You think they do? Now,
Absolutely.
they
don't throw your eggs in one basket.
Right.
I'm sure with some of the tips and the many tips that are coming in, some of them equal to each other from different people that has validity.
Yeah.
So they will go out and do that. They will do that. Like yesterday, when they said the car stop was made, the FBI and the sheriff's office personnel were the ones that were following that car. It wasn't done by some police car stopping that car. So they knew who they were looking for.
It was under surveillance.
And that's exactly what they have right now. They
You
were
think on multiple other people?
On multiple other people, yes. And the name of the game is to catch that individual and have the #1 name, probable cause.
Guthrie, as well as her sister Annie and brother Cameron. Nancy Guthrie missing now for 11 days. The Sheriff's Department here says that they've received more than 4,000 calls in just the last 24 hours since the FBI released 6 photos and 3 videos of an armed, masked individual tampering with Nancy's doorbell camera on the early Sunday morning of February 1st, when Nancy Guthrie disappeared. As hundreds of detectives and federal agents expand the search around Pima County, authorities have given no updates about a possible suspect or person of interest. Last night, investigators did detain a man for questioning, later releasing him without charges. A source tells CNN that the man was on investigators' radar before the release of the doorbell camera footage. The man, who identified himself to the press as Carlos, spoke with CNN this morning outside his mother-in-law's house, where he lives with his wife and children.
What do you want from
To clear my name. That's all I want.
There had to maybe been something they told you as to how they got to you. How did they
A
get
tip.
to the Rio Rico
An
area?
anonymous tip. That's what they said.
Okay.
They thought you looked like that person in the
That's
video?
what they told my mother-in-law.
Okay.
They showed her a
So they thought you
video.
were the suspect.
Yeah, because they said that my eyes and my eyelashes looked the same.
Carlos told us that authorities searched his car and his mother-in-law's house, and as of this morning still had his phone. CNN talked to his mother-in-law, Josefina, last night.
I don't know anything about her. They only said that they gave a tip that she was in my house. And I told them, you can go in and search my house. There's nobody there. I have nothing to hide. There's nobody in my house. And I don't know what's going on.
Also today, TMZ reportedly received an email from a person who claims to know the identity of the individual who abducted Nancy Guthrie. This individual is demanding 1 Bitcoin, which is worth about $67,000, in exchange for that information. TMZ says it handed over that letter to the FBI. I want to bring in CNN's Ed Lavandera, who is outside Nancy Guthrie's house in Pima County. Ed, what are you seeing as the investigation continues today?
Well, given all of the activity that we saw last night, today feeling very different here in Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. However, what we have seen in various parts of the neighborhood, a number of FBI teams that have literally been walking the blocks and walking along the streets around this area, looking through the landscape, walking through cactus and walking through the brush here, looking for anything that might have focused really on the ground, maybe perhaps something that would have been discarded from a passing car or that sort of thing. So they've meticulously been walking throughout all of this neighborhood. That's been really the thrust of the activity that we have seen throughout the course of today. And really beyond that, again, no clear information as to if there's any more of, with all of those leads pouring in right now, if there's any more sense of a sense that there could be another person that they're looking at, or a true suspect or a person of interest in this case. But that is what we're seeing, at least visibly back here in the neighborhood. And it's striking that some of this very tedious, just kind of walking along the street police work is what we're seeing here 11 days out.
Ed Lavandera, thank you so much. Joining us now to discuss is former FBI Assistant Director Frank Figliuzzi and CNN senior correspondent Josh Campbell, who previously served as a supervisory special agent with the FBI. Josh, let me start with you. The FBI said today that it's conducting an extensive search around Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood in the Catalina foothills area today. You have some new reporting on what they might precisely be looking for. What is it?
That's right. We've seen these agents now back out on the streets where you are there in the Tucson area. A law enforcement source familiar tells me that they're out there searching for any possible items that the man who was seen in that chilling video outside Nancy Guthrie home, he had those various items on him. Now they're concerned and looking to see, well, maybe did he throw those away, discard them as he was then leaving the scene there. And so they're going through in this very, as Ed described, this tedious process, looking for, can they find the mask? Can they find the gloves, the backpack, any of those items? The goal is, if they are able to recover them, to then analyze to see if there's any type of DNA they can extract as they try to get an identification of who this person is. So very much a twofold effort right now. We have this public plea and appeal from law enforcement to the public for tips, but behind the scenes, they're still looking for that evidence and that one big break in the case, Jake.
Frank, are there parts of the videos or the still photos released yesterday or any other elements of this investigation that you think could lead law enforcement to believe that Nancy Guthrie is still being held in Tucson or the surrounding area?
Yeah, Jake, I could make a case either way here. So the case in favor of Nancy still being alive is that in the video, we do see an individual who has some degree of preparation for this. Whether that preparation means he also planned several steps ahead, we don't know. But the fact that he was covered head to toe, that he wanted to hide his identity, that he somehow gained access, this does lead to the possibility of a legit kidnap. I'm not sure about a legit ransom plan, but that does mean he or she could still be alive. The argument against that could be that while he was prepared, he seems to be unplanned. And I'm pointing specifically to his seeming surprise with regard to the doorbell cam and the need to go, hey, let me go grab some brush and see if that works. That's not a lot of planning. And I'm hoping against hope that he didn't just go in with some intent to harm and things went awfully bad. And this whole thing about ransom is a mere afterthought or a cover for something else.
Yeah. And Frank, on the gentleman that was detained overnight and questioned in connection and then completely released, he calls himself Carlos. He says he was held in handcuffs from 4 p.m. last night, Mountain Time here in Arizona, to 12 a.m. He was not read his Miranda rights for 2 hours. Are tactics like that typical when questioning a subject during a case like this? And what do you make of the fact that they released him, they let him keep his phone, his mother-in-law let law enforcement search the house? What's your read on this all?
Boy, it's sloppy and messy, Jake. It's not ideal, but you have exigent circumstances. You have a life and death situation. Would I like to see this handled differently? Yes. If he's telling the truth that he was handcuffed for hours without Miranda rights, we know that Miranda versus Arizona says if you have custody plus interrogation, you need Miranda rights. So something's not right with this picture. I don't know if Pima County rushed it. I don't know if the FBI was initially in on that plan or not, but they need to back up and use some of the FBI techniques and gadgets that would allow you to surveil a home and know what's going inside before you hit it.
And Josh, TMZ reports that they received a letter via email from someone who purports to know who the kidnapper is, but they're demanding a single Bitcoin worth about $67,000 in exchange for the information. How seriously do you think investigators should take this Bitcoin part of these mysterious emails that media outlets are getting in this specific claim?
Well, the FBI has said that it is going to take every lead they get seriously, but I don't know, Jake. Here, I think we need a lot more information to fully assess whether this is something that is verifiable and valid in this case. We know, sadly, in these notorious kidnapping, high-profile cases, sometimes authorities will get tips that end up being relevant. Sometimes they get tips from people who maybe are just sending it with the best of intentions, but then they don't actually relate to the case. And then kind of this third category that we've been talking about since these purported ransom notes started surfacing, and that's people that for sinister reasons or just to cause mischief simply try to gum up the system and slow down the investigation. And so I think we have a lot more to do before we give credit to this. It's also worth pointing out that even after those purported ransom notes, there still hasn't appeared to be any communication between the person who sent them and the family. So I think TBD on that as authorities wait to determine whether that's actually applicable here.
And Frank, the Sheriff's Department here says that there's not going to be a news conference unless there's a significant development in the case and something to actually share. Everything that unfolded yesterday with the new image, a person detained, that all seemed pretty significant to me. Why would they not have a public update?
So in law enforcement, when you go through press conference training, they do tell you, don't hold a press conference if you've got nothing to say. It's going to work against you. But you brought up a good point, Jake, which is when you've also done something very high profile and public that hasn't panned out, you really don't want to have to answer questions about it. So that's factoring in as well.
Yeah. Frank Figliusi, national lead. We're live from Tucson, Arizona, right outside the Pima County Sheriff's Office. The chilling surveillance photos and videos released yesterday showing an armed, masked individual outside Nancy Guthrie's home back in the early morning hours on Sunday, February 1st. They're not just a nightmare, they're the biggest break so far in the disappearance of the 84-year-old. And they may offer investigators important clues about her kidnapper's identity. So what might those clues be? Let's bring in Edward Baker, who specializes in analyzing forensic videos such as these. Edward, thanks for having us. It's been more than 24 hours since the FBI released these images and videos. They're pretty decent quality as far as I can tell, compared especially with other ones that have led to the capture of alleged murderers. Law enforcement has worked with a lot less and successfully found suspects. Luigi Mangione, for example. As an expert who analyzes video, can you explain the process of how to enhance these images and what the FBI might be able to learn about this individual?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Jake. Everything starts out as a research project. So if we, as law enforcement did, get our hands on the video, we, as an analyst, will assess the video and determine the quality of the video. What are the characteristics of the video? How was the video recorded? In what format? And are there artifacts or compression involved in that recording process? Once we determine that, then we look at the visual aspect of that. What's the fidelity of the video? What's the quality? What kind of details or pixel resolution are we working with? What's the pixel density in certain critical areas, like the face or the backpack or the gloves or things of that nature? So that opportunity with this particular video has done a couple of things for us. One is it's done exactly what law enforcement was hoping for, and that's generating a lot of tips. The thing that we have to be careful of as an analyst, or even for the public's information,